And I'm just going to go ahead and introduce myself, if that's okay. I'm Patrice Ernest with the Atlanta Regional Commission, and we're the Area Agency on Aging for the 10-county Atlanta region. We fund programs and services and oversee a coordinated service delivery system for the 10-county Atlanta region. And in your packet, I actually gave you a map of the state of Georgia so that you can see we are one of 12 area agencies on aging in Georgia. We're funded through Health and Human Services, through the Administration on Aging, and then in each state there is what we call a state unit on aging. And through the Older Americans Act, primarily, that's where majority of our funding comes from. And we're a well-kept secret. How many of you know about ARC? And so it's about half. Area agencies on aging, there's about 650 of them nationwide. They vary in each state because the state unit on aging then designates the area agencies on aging. And in the southeast area in particular, I'm a little biased, but I think it was a good idea that the state said, let's go ahead and put those area agencies on aging in the regional commissions or the local council of governments, which helps us because we also have, as a regional planning and development commission, appointed and elected officials. So that kind of gives you just we could do a whole session on the area agencies on aging. But primarily our funding is home delivered meal programs, Meals on Wheels, known as Meals on Wheels, senior centers. You have in your packet information on just our overall service area, our 10-county region, and the programs and services that we provide. Thank you so much. We also fund specialized programs, and our whole primary mission is to serve those in greatest social and economic need. We've got quite an innovative area agency on aging, if I do say so myself, here in Atlanta. We have several initiatives. Some of you may be familiar with the Lifelong Communities Initiative, where we're looking at local areas and really looking at how can a community be a lifelong community and what mechanisms need to be in place for that. I am the coordinator of resources, the Education and Resource Coordinator at the Atlanta Regional Commission. So that's a little bit of background as we got started. And we're all set here, so
yes,
should I just give... I'm sorry.
Did she tell you that she has been for 22 years? Yes? No?
No.
That's great. That's amazing. So, anyway, I think she pretty much introduced herself and what she's going to be talking about. Just to reiterate again, we're going to try to do something different today. Until probably 9:30, she's going to present the database, the challenges, the problems, the opportunities. And she has been so good with us that she prepared a package for us. And in one of the pages, this black and white page, she summarized everything that we're going to be discussing. And in the back page, we have 4 questions that we would love to answer with today's meeting. So after her presentation from 9:30 to 10, we're going to divide in teams, 4 teams. Each one is going to take charge of a question, and we're going to brainstorm answers. So from 10 to 10:30, the end of our meeting, we're going to aggregate all the results to see what happens. Okay? So Trin has brought notepads and markers for us to use as sticky notes to answer questions, so then they're easy to pin up anywhere and visualize. Okay? So thank you so much for coming today. Any announcements before we proceed with the presentation? Yes.
Just very brief. Next Wednesday on Nova Science Now, Georgia Tech's going to be featured some of their robotics work. So
fantastic.
Nice. Yes.
Well done.
Fantastic.
Awesome. All right.
Good. Okay, thank you. So my role as the Education and Resource Coordinator really centers on what we call the ESP database. area agencies on aging cannot, by law, cannot provide direct service. So we're funding the agencies to provide those services. And my colleague Carolyn Rader just came in too from the division. So Carolyn's been attending these sessions far longer than I have. So one of the things that we can do that is really a direct service is information and referral, information dissemination. And we do that housed within our area agency on aging and then with an extended contracting network. We're actually a 24/7 information and referral line. So people can call us, and they do. We get about 4,000 calls a month on everything from, my mother is exhibiting signs of dementia. What do I do? Where do I go? I'm overwhelmed. So can you tell me about education classes that I might want to be a part of? So to about 15 years ago, to put all that information together, because we were on Rolodexes and bulletin boards, we weren't talking to each other, we decided to set up a database. And so this is the database that 15 years later, I thought, when is this database going to be finished? And it's never going to be finished. But there are about 1,000 professional users in the state of Georgia now who are using this database. It's not just an Atlanta database, it's a state of Georgia database. The providers who use this system, the professionals, include that whole aging network system that I just mentioned, those 12 area agencies on aging. The case managers use it to actually link to services and programs. Our Medicaid waivered program, Community Care, those providers are in the system. The database includes for-profit, nonprofit, and governmental services in the system. So it's comprehensive. In addition to that whole public sector network that uses the database, we have subscribers to the system. And that includes several different hospital systems, maybe with their case management or discharge planning, St. Joseph's Hospital, Piedmont Hospital. We have other agencies. The Alzheimer's Association uses the system statewide for their helpline. And most recently, and this is very challenging and very exciting, the Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Disabilities has just logged on 250 new users. This includes case expediters, because of the need to, through the Department of Justice settlement agreement, to actually look at home and community-based services for persons that will be transitioning out of the hospital settings, our state hospital settings. So the 6 hospitals and the regional offices of Department of Behavioral Health and Disabilities, Developmental Disabilities, are using this system. So what I want you to do quickly is look at that taxonomy, that long sheet that you have in your packet. Turn to the page that has the red bold for the categories and the services under those categories, because that's the structure, that's the taxonomy, that's the basis of the information we have. It's what we call a 2-tiered system. And so you have categories and services. When we started with the database, we started with it as the Elder Enhanced Program. And as we started expanding, and there's a push nationwide, you heard Dr. Balot a couple meetings ago talking about aging and disability. And that's a huge new trend, not just looking in our silos of aging services, but looking at aging and disability. So what we did was begin to expand our information in our database to serve persons with developmental disabilities. So what I want you to do while I'm logging on is just take a few minutes, look at the categories and services. I really, really want you to look at the category called Health Supportive Services, because that's where we're going to focus the session on. One side lists the 300 services that are in the system. The other side lists the categories and then the corresponding services that are under those categories. So you can see that, like for instance, under housing options, we have subsidized housing options, we have housing authorities, we have non-subsidized, we have mobile home parks. If you look under animal services, we have veterinarians who actually will come to the home of an older adult to do a home visit. But we also have the canine assistance programs. We have pet supportive therapy programs. So this is kind of the entree to the system. As our public system, we actually have a whole client side that we're doing intake. Some people may not even want to give us their name, and that's fine. Some people, we may want to do a more comprehensive assessment and get that information. What you're seeing is the second half, the half that is the services side of the database. It is what we call a professional tool. So this particular database is only used by those about 1,000 professionals in the state. What happens, and you have a card in your packet, that some of those major services roll over to a website. And you can take a look at that website. But I want us to concentrate with this session on the professional tool. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the database itself, services. And this is what we call our selection filter. And I can actually search by anything if I need to. Many of our case managers know exactly what they're looking for. Yesterday, many of the one of the providers that someone was looking for, Friends of Disabled Adults and Children. So they were able to find that in the system. The system has about 24,000 services. In just a word, you have a brochure about inclusion, exclusion criteria. To be listed in the database, we have specific criteria. Number one, you have to be in business for at least 6 months. Depending upon the service, to be listed in the database, and this is so important, as a companion sitter or providing personal care assistance, you have to be licensed to provide that in the state of Georgia. So we have a good working relationship with the state licensing entity, the Healthcare Facility Regulation Division of the Department of Community Health. Boy, that's a long one. DCH. They actually send us, for instance, personal care homes. Have to be licensed. Many times the public know personal care homes as assisted living facilities. But we get a listing every month from the long-term care section of the Department of Community Health, HFR, of those new providers, and even more important, those that have had revocation of licensure. We've got to get them out. Mm-hmm. We've got to get them out. We have in the state, those 12 area agencies on aging all have a resource specialist. And I've got to tell you all, again, I'm a little biased, but it's a fantastic team. It includes RNs, LCSWs, staff who have had background in mental health. Our staff, we have someone who has a master's in education. So we're really taking seriously, this is not data entry. And in our area agencies on aging recognize that, because with 1,000 users, if someone goes into a record and the record's wrong, the information's incorrect, trust in the system plummets, and we can't do that, let alone our responsibility to have accurate information that's reliable and up to date. So let's look at the 24,000 services. I'm just going to quickly go into, for instance, personal care homes. And I'm just hitting my button here that shows on your list all of those personal care homes. If I wanted the definition, I could come over here, and again, I could select personal care homes.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Perhaps I missed it, but how were these classifications or the categories
designed?
First?
Partly due to the calls and the major service areas that we recognized as the Area Agency on Aging, service area needs, for example. It was based on, there's a national taxonomy through the Alliance of Information and Referral Systems. So we looked at that national taxonomy, and that's really like a 5-tiered taxonomy, which we felt like was too comprehensive for our database. So we looked at just having that two-tiered. We're constantly, and that's updating it, and that's why I'm hoping, because y'all are the experts in some of the areas that we're going to be looking at. So we bring together providers, we bring together those that are using the system, case managers, and say, what are the questions we maybe need to ask providers too? So, and you'll see that as we go along.
And one silly question, but do you have any categories that are stellar, that are always the most frequently used?
Most frequently requested
Yes.
include, y'all can guess this one, right? Let me hear it. Transportation. Transportation is one of the number one. Affordable housing. Right now, we are getting bombarded with requests for financial assistance for utility bills, medical bills, some just financial needs. And then a lot of times, people call us and they may not, like I said, they may not know what they're looking for. So in-home assistance and looking at eligibility-based programs are some of those major services. Thank you. So I'm going to go ahead and close out of here, and I'm going to go into my personal care homes. So we've got about 1,000 personal care homes listed in the system. There's many more that are licensed by the state than 1,000, but we've included those, number one, who have responded to us, and number two, who have kept the information updated. Because if they're not going to give us quality, good information, we're not going to put them into the system. So we have about 1,000 personal care homes statewide, and I can go in and I can select any one of the 159 counties, and I'm going to do DeKalb County just for example. And I'm saying of those, how many, and DeKalb County's got the largest number of personal care homes in the entire state. We have about 60 of them listed. There's many more than that, but we have 60 that have responded to our requests for information. And I'm just going to go, yes,
I
Karen.
just want to make sure we define that. So I know you said it's also means assisted living. So there's personal care homes meaning a home, an actual person's home.
Right,
Correct?
right. They're all listed. The state sees personal care homes, whether it's a very large facility, 60 beds facility, or whether it's a small individual home, they're all under the same licensure as personal care homes. We include in here both. Now we could query on here and we could say how many of them have over 20 beds, and you're probably going to get what are more commonly known as assisted living facilities. So, good question.
Are you following, they changed the laws last year and recognized personal care homes that specialize on memory care, dementia?
We have, you'll see when we go in, we ask that question.
Is that
So,
a new category?
yeah.
That'd be very useful information.
Yes. And our staff have been working closely following the new regs. So, so I'm just going to go ahead and go into one record, any one, and I'm just picking a provider. This is the detail. This is kind of the heartbeat of the database, and it's really, I like to when I share this information, I like to see it in thirds. So we have from this third on up, mostly the demographic information, and everything that is highlighted, that's actually a blue, is a yes. So we're actually asking from this up, we're asking probably the three most important data elements here would be, of course, geographic information. And with some providers, it doesn't matter where they may serve the entire state. If it's a facility-based organization, they may serve the entire state. Nursing homes, we wouldn't want to highlight 159 counties because then it would just jumble everything up. Home care providers, however, have specific counties that they serve, and so we're going to list those counties that they serve. So this is a personal care home. Payment source is critical for us because we need to know. And remember, I mentioned that we have fee-for-service, nonprofit. There's also sliding fee scale in here too. But here is some of the detailed information. Semi-private cost, private cost. Anything that the provider wanted us to clarify in here is going to be in here. With some, we have emergency financial assistance listed. So we're going to ask the provider, what materials does someone need to bring if they're applying for services? Do they need to bring a copy of their last unpaid bill? So this, again, most of the demographic information. Probably the next two most important data elements on here would be cost. And then I always say one of the most important things that our case managers and users say that is so important is we're giving them a name. We're giving them a contact. So sometimes they can slice through some of the telephone calls to get to the person that they really need to talk to here. Our records we have a formalized updating process, so we're constantly adhering to a calendar of updating. In addition to that, informal updating from colleagues that we get. We actually have a revise button. If a user saw that this information was incorrect, they could email us and we can correct that information. So with 1,000 users, you can see the flow of updating kind of moves both ways. The second part of and 90% of our records, that's our goal, 90% of our records have been updated within a year. With personal care homes, home care providers being updated on a biannual basis. In some critical services, such as suicide prevention hotlines, we're constantly making sure that that information, the telephone numbers usually don't change, but we can't take any chances to make sure that that information's wrong. So that's even on a more this second third right here is really detailed information. That's the part that as we look at health supportive products, I need help with. Because like I said, we've had it the same for 15 years. And I know, just based on what I've heard in this group, that there's so much that has happened that we need to let the consumer know about. So, but this is, again, personal care homes. Here we have your dementia care. And we're asking, is it a secured unit? Is it a separate unit? Do they accept persons with dementia? And if so, on what stage? This particular area, we're really expanding. Remember I said we're going beyond the scope of just aging services? And so we're asking the provider, can they serve persons with a developmental disability? We're working with the Fuqua Center on late life depression. And this is something that, remember I said the staff from BHDD, Behavioral Health, is going to be using the database. We're asking a provider, can you serve someone with a mental health diagnosis? And when we ask that question, that could be huge, right? I mean, that could be cognitive, that could be psychosis. Can you serve someone with schizophrenia in a personal care home? If they say yes, to this question, we're asking them to clarify that. We're asking two questions after that. If so, we're asking the provider, and keep in mind that this is a self-reported database from the provider's perspective. So if they say, yes, I can serve someone with mental health diagnoses, we're asking, well, can you tell us a little bit more? What does that mean? And so we're clarifying that down in the comments. The second question we're asking if they say yes is, does your staff have background in mental health? And if so, what are their qualifications? Or what is their background? Again, it's going to be interesting. We're just doing that now, so we're going to have to see what we get as this month we start updating some of the assisted living facilities. And if any of you represent those assisted living facility, I'd love to hear your feedback on that, because it's going to be very, very interesting to hear. They've told us that they cannot serve persons with traumatic brain injury or spinal cord injury. The Georgia Brain Injury Association of Georgia uses the database too. So again, when we start looking at assistive technology devices, I need to make sure that we've got information that's most current and updated for users that are serving persons with TBI or SCI. So again, all of those are yes. And then I scroll down and I can see we only put in permanently licensed personal care homes, permanently licensed home care providers, and this kind of tells us what the overall agency is in the managing org. So let me just quickly, because we've got 2 minutes, show kind of how how a case manager would be using this system. I'm going to close out of this record, and we've got 61 personal care homes, and I can remember years ago when we had our information and referral line, someone would call and say, I would say, okay, I'll send you a list. And I can remember the list actually not having telephone numbers on them. I mean, that's the way we got it from the state, and we just made a copy and kind of sent it out. You know, 61 personal care, how does the consumer know what, you know? So this is more center-based too. Remember, we looked at services needs there. We asked if an assisted living facility can accept someone with a pet. Can they serve someone using a wheelchair? I mean, what good is it going to be if you're using a wheelchair and the bedrooms are upstairs? So let's look from the 61 personal care homes. I'm going to go into what we call our builder, and a lot of times our staff are on the phone while they're asking these questions, and they've got this system down pretty good so that they can ask those questions as they're filtering here. So I don't know why pets are amenities, but we put it under amenities. So, there's my amenity, my pet. And then also let's look at, what else did I say? I said wheelchair, right? So we're asking the system, of those 61, how many can serve persons using a wheelchair, and also will allow someone to bring their pet. And again, it's self-reported from the provider. So of the 61, I'm down to 9 now. And I can search by cost. I can search by any of that criteria that we've asked those questions for. I can ask, as we're going through the state and training the staff from behavioral health, they're looking at how many personal care homes can accept someone with a mental health diagnosis. Those working with the developmental disabilities population are looking at, of course, how many can serve those with developmental disabilities. So I'm going to switch over and just show you where we are with health supportive products, and you're going to say, you need us. If I go into the category, health supportive services, I go in and I can see I have right now currently the categories of daily living aids, assistive technology devices, durable medical equipment. I think I have specialized clothing in here too. And some of the providers are nationwide providers. That was really helpful for some of the rural areas. If you look at Eccles County in Georgia, down by the Florida line, the whole county has only 20 providers that are located in that county.
So I understand these two categories in the name of the main category, health support services. With your own words, can you give us a definition of what is the category health support services?
Health supportive services would include those technology devices or daily living aids that can assist someone to function independently. Let's see if I'm close to the definition.
You could call it health support products and services.
Yes, yes. And that's a good point, because you'll see as we start looking at what we want to add, maybe it's not just services, but maybe it is providers or products. The challenge with that is that we're looking at it from a provider perspective, so we wouldn't put in one particular product. We'd have to put in that provider that either manufactures or some way for the consumer to know that they sponsor that product. So let's look at the category here. And as I was preparing for this presentation, it's like this root system of a tree, because we're looking at health supportive services, but I'm like, oh gosh, we've got to talk about home modifications. We've got to talk about, it can, if you look at the database and you look at the services, you can really see where they may cross-reference each other. But for it not to be overwhelming, I think we need to look at this particular category. So I'm going to go ahead and just look at what I say under. Remember, I can go over here and I can hit my little And I can come over here and hit my definition. If I can see it, health supportive services. Sorry about that. You can see right now we only have 4, and I don't think that's capturing things. We've kind of blended a lot of things into a assistive technology devices. When we started this out 15 years ago, the thing was, let's make sure we put in the sip and puffs. You know, that was the term of that was really high on technology, and I know that we're far beyond that. Yes.
A number of years ago, I was involved in this project that was designing a website called Technology for Long-Term Care, and they've already classified all of the devices that are out there. And what they did was they have a certain amount of information for each device. How much does it cost, where it's available, how reliable it is, and they have all of these different categories. I was just looking it up. Assistance, call, bathing, communication, dressing, eating, falls, incontinence, leisure, and so on. And so they've already done a lot of the work
A lot of
on the
that.
product side. And this is research that was supported by the DHHS. So it's not a private industry. So that might be a really
that
good
may
starting
yeah
point.
that may be that may be certainly. We have been able to really build this database with that partnership, as you can see what we did with HFR. So yeah, I'd love to know about that too. So the definition here, going in, and you can see it health supportive services, programs that provide equipment, products, or other forms of support, which are supplemental to the treatment or rehabilitation of people who have illnesses, injuries, or disabilities. See, we've even kind of gone beyond that, really. I mean, we're looking at independent living, so maybe our definition needs to be looked at again. If we go into just one particular record, let's just go into ABLE data. And you can see this is ABLE data where we've got the entire, of course it's a national record, so we've got the entire state covered. And then you can come down here and you can see these are the only questions we're asking. So we've got a long ways to grow because all of this is local use, and we can actually expand with those questions. So that's where we are right now. If you take your sheet out that says detailed information in your packet, I've made a copy of this from this particular category. And you can see where we have some of the questions. There may be a few that we've added since we have like a loan closet. Real important, especially in some of the rural areas. You know, some of the questions we ask about those particular providers.
What's a loan closet?
That basically it's like the Alzheimer's Association, I think in the Rome, Georgia area, helped to sponsor a closet where individuals can come if they're in need of some durable medical equipment and just loan that out for as long as they need it. So.
At Coastal Life too, we have loan libraries so people can try out devices before they actually purchase it in their home or at work to see if it actually works in the situation. Maybe try it out for like a week or two.
Great.
Yeah. Okay.
I have some question about the users.
Okay.
My understanding is that this tool is for basically professional case managers.
Yes.
They are, say, internal case managers?
The case managers would include those of our contracting agencies, like those county aging programs, Fulton County Office of Aging, DeKalb's Office of Senior Affairs. Our case managers from the Visiting Nurse Health Systems use the system, but also other case managers maybe from hospitals. So there's a wide variety, and it's not just case managers. Information referral specialists use it as well.
What are the qualifications for people who have access to this?
They are
I mean, what's the criteria for people who access this?
to access they are enrolled with a login and password, and either they're through our Aging Services Network, or they're subscribers, meaning that they actually subscribe with a subscription, and based on the number of users, they're actually paying on a yearly basis to access the system. It's a great public-private partnership because it helps us to support those resource specialists that are updating that information. Now, another question about those that are actually in the system, again, you have to meet our inclusion criteria, either a permanent licensure, in business 6 months. For those doing home modifications, and this is something, again, I'd love your feedback on this. How do you put your arms around contractors who will say they do home modifications? How do we say that the inclusion? And so currently, only those that have a CAPS certification, Certified Aging in Place Specialist, or if they're a licensed architect, because we want to make sure that the ramps are ramps that adhere to whatever standards they need to. That's our criteria under home modifications. We get calls all the time from contractors wanting to be listed in the system, and that's how we are able to put our arms around it. If there's other criteria, that's what I'd love your feedback on.
Yeah, I guess related to that, how do you then, because you mentioned the licensing, but also that you don't feature one product, and I can clearly see why, but it kind of then, I'm with a company developing a product, so then, we would like to be able to not even be listed maybe, but it is, we are offering something viable, and not just us, so then it's like, how would that factor in with?
And that's a great question, because what happens is, remember the questions that we're asking on that sheet? We're trying to standardize so that we're asking that question to all the providers, so that we're standardizing some of the questions there. And so what happens is that when someone's on the telephone with someone, they're finding out, I need a provider for this or this service. Our information referral system, we're taught just as standard protocol that you give at least 3 referrals to a consumer, and then they make the decision. Sometimes when we start getting into some of those service areas, there may be 0 or 1 provider that covers that area, so it really varies. Okay, and I know we've got to, and I apologize, I feel like I'm rushing, but this is so exciting, and I'm really anxious to get your input.
Stay in this room until 10:30, so no problem.
Oh, we can?
Yes, we can.
Oh, that's great. Okay, yay! I'll slow down a little bit. On that sheet, so you have where we are now under health supportive products. And based on last DATHA meeting, I heard some key terms that was shared, and it just, light bulbs went off. I'm like, this would be a fantastic service category. Remember the 2-tiered system? So flip that page over, if you will, the one sheet that says service detail. I do, yes. I'll get it for you just a second. The service detail page, this one right here. Flip this page over. And based on, it was perfect that the presentation was last month, and I may have gotten a couple terms wrong, maybe, I don't know, but I have what we have with our current service listings under health supportive services, and then you can see what I'm proposing, that we start collecting information about providers on home safety assessment programs, those that will come into the home and look at possible ways to be able to enhance independent living within a home. Home adaptation modification, that's really a category for housing services that I see. So that would not really be under this category, but again, what do we need to look at in terms of the providers being listed under that category? Home medication monitoring systems. Right now we've got them lumped under, I think, assistive technology devices. I want to pull it out And I heard, just based on the conversation last month, some really innovative programs that the consumer may not even be aware of that may be available. Home activity monitoring systems. And I'm not sure, I'm not sure, that's where I'm hoping that you all will help me, because you're the experts, in what is the correct terminology to use for that. Telemedicine programs. We actually have the telemedicine programs in the state of Georgia in the system now, but they're hidden. They're not pulled out as their own service. So keep in mind that we're developing this for case managers that can have access to it. And if they don't know that service is in there, they're not going to find it. And then the personal health record programs. People are unaware about personal health records, that's an important part. So again, I tried to pull that out. What we want to do for the next, maybe about half hour, is break up into groups based on these 4 questions. This is kind of our next step in really developing this and kind of, really expanding on it. So the questions that I have is, are there existing providers that fit into some of these categories? Are there some providers or services that need to be added in addition to these proposed services? I can't have more than 5 new services that we add at a time, because what will happen is we'll develop this whole new service category, and then it's up to those 15 resource specialists who will be contacting the providers, looking at the inclusion-exclusion information, and then there's a whole training component that we have to roll out to those case managers that are using the system. So, see, that's where it's so much more than data entry. It's really understanding what these categories and services are. Third, and this is real important, what inclusion criteria, if any, do we need for specific services? If we're adding, something specific with home modification, what do we need to have? Are there professional certifications that I'm unaware of, that we're unaware of, that we really need to look at? And then lastly, and this one's the tough one. If we're looking at some of these programs, what are the questions under here that we need to ask? Right now we're asking, will a provider, will they adjust equipment? Do they have a catalog? Will they deliver equipment? Do they have high-tech equipment? This is, again, about 15 years old. So I think we're way beyond that. Is a contract a rental or purchase agreement? And again, this is where we can expand. So those are the questions that I have. Any questions kind of before we get started on?
Yes, I think it would be helpful to know ERC's position or policy on the purpose of this tool. I mean, one is for information distribution.
Right.
The other is information distribution plus quality or standard filtering.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's just for pure information distribution, then the inclusion, there would not be inclusion or exclusion criteria. There will be stated that this vendor is not licensed. So just to inform the consumer that that this is not licensed.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, we don't have to think about whether or not to include or exclude. But if
right. There's some standard in that brochure, and we share that with all the providers that contact us. There's those overriding standard inclusion-exclusion criteria. We do not necessarily tell every person that contacts us for home modification, these are only CAP certified individuals. It'll say it in the record. For legal services, we only put those that are attorneys that are members of NALA, National Academy of Elder Law Attorneys, because again, we're not the phone book. So we have to have that criteria, and we specify it in the body of the record, saying member of NALA. But we're not necessarily, as we're consulting with families, we're not really necessarily saying, this. We say, look at the information and then make the decision based on the information that you get. So.
Is the first section, home adaptation, is that like material, physical, or does that include technology?
Right now, under home modification, it includes those providers that are doing wheelchair ramps. Those that may be looking at, widening doorways. Again, it's really based on the provider and the services that they do.
If they're doing that, one of the complaints I've heard, or the problems I've heard a lot of lately, is the geometry of the bathrooms. They're not really getting that right. A wheelchair really can't navigate in them, even though they may be certified as qualified.
So if there's a provider that specializes in bathroom modifications specific to persons using a wheelchair.
There probably needs to be a spec for the geometry.
And what we may do, and this goes back to your inclusion, we may say that provider in the comments specializes in assuring that, that bathroom modifications meets this spec. We have to be real careful what we're putting in comments, because we have, again, back to the standardization, the level, to make sure that we're not putting in, so much information about one provider and nothing about another provider, because we're not making recommendations, endorsements. We can't. We have a disclaimer on here that says that. So we have to just make sure if we're asking those type of questions, we're asking all the providers the same questions. Okay, we're going to go ahead and reconvene and look at these questions. And what I'm hoping to do is to be able to take your comments, put them all together, and report back to the group. Does that sound like and I have a feeling there may be some further discussions in further areas. We're looking at between now and April and making these adjustments. It's a huge, huge process to make any kind of adjustments to the system, because even though it's web-based, you can imagine we have to take, this is what I've pulled up is what I call our scrub-based version, because this is the live data, and then what it does is it moves over to a read-only version that everyone has access to. And it is internet access, of course, so we actually can go into the providers if they have a website. We saw that on the record. So it involves a lot to do that. And I hope that our discussion, I hope that everyone kept in mind, because I heard someone talking about some of the services outside the Atlanta area, and we had a little discussion about that, about, keep in mind that we're looking at this as a statewide database too. So that's real important as we look at some of the rural areas. We tend to see things, of course, from an urban perspective, but the services are, no matter where someone lives. So let's go ahead and group number 1. And if you don't mind going ahead, and the question was, are there existing providers that fit under these proposed services? And then any other comments, because I think some people had some really important additional comments to give. So group 1?
Okay, so the general answer is yes.
I think we'd be in trouble if we said no, sorry.
But how you break down those providers and whether they fall under services versus the products was the question here. Is health supportive services the correct answer? So Karen has.
So I was looking at this list when you had this big category of health supportive services, and I looked at the current service listings. To me, those were all products, not services. And the products may have a service attached to them, but to me, a question would be, is this really health supportive services, or are these health supportive products? Because you have another category on the website that's called supportive services.
And that's more like a friendly visiting service. Oh.
care transition program could be a supportive service.
Uh-huh,
As
uh-huh.
compared to these listings, to me, all look like they're focused first on product,
Mm-hmm.
and then there's a service attached.
That's an important. And Karen is with the NORC, and the NORC actually use the database. So you're looking at it from
A different perspective.
an important perspective. If we can't find it to begin with 24,000 services, there's just a wealth of information that tends to get lost in here.
She asked the question, what is North? North is naturally occurring retirement communities. So they're places where people live in their homes and we provide support services to help them stay in their homes as long as possible.
So were we on, am I on target with some of the topic areas that you mentioned last?
I believe so, but one of the concerns I had is the correct organization of these, and I didn't have time to really think about it in depth, but what I kind of based on what Karen was saying, I do want to point out there are some of these that would be self-installed, there's some that would be associated with a home health agency or a service provider, and there are others that maybe an integrator installs them for you, and then you just it becomes a monthly service fee, but it's not necessarily.
Oh, yeah.
So there are a lot of different ways to look at this and options that you may have to add.
And that may be under that next level that we take it down to, asking some of those questions. Okay, great. Good feedback. So maybe health supportive products and services, or does that sound? Products? Okay.
You could potentially do it both ways because it is health centric. I guess these are getting more at the home side, and I mean it's hard to figure out how to break it down based on all the options here that I haven't really read through.
Yeah, it's kind of a hard question because you have to look at all your categories.
Right.
You know where all these things are, and we don't have that knowledge.
Yeah.
And being a database, they can potentially fall under multiple categories.
Right, right, yeah. Home modification is that example. Okay, great. Group 2, are there other services that should be added?
Group 2.
Group 2, okay, sorry.
Here are 4 that we are not sure if they're falling under some of your categories, but
okay.
we couldn't find them. So that one is indoor air quality assessment. There is one in here under that is energy conservation and weatherization, but we're talking about things like mold.
Mold has been, we have been getting calls and mold removal.
Right.
Mold removal for no cost.
Oh, no.
If anybody knows of a provider that would do that, huge, yeah. Okay, great.
Another one is behavioral management technologies and services, and y'all may need to elaborate on that a little bit, on what that is.
Behavioral management technology?
I think a lot of this is focused on maybe physical impairments or considerations, whereas as people age, there are also a number of associated problems with cognitive decline. So it's not just whether your physical environment is conducive to your functioning or whether you need assistance with opening things or moving about, or even if it's the safety or the medication, but behavior is a big part of disability. So if somebody's very agitated, very anxious, confused, and it's a problem for the individual, but certainly a problem for the caregiver.
So what would be the service? What would be the
behavior management?
So would it be a licensed professional counselor? Would it
it would be technology helping with the behavior management, and attached to that the discussion about whether it's a product or a service. That's in this case not very clear cut because it's both.
Okay.
There's a product and there's a service attached.
But in addition to the technologies that provided, there may be counselors who specialize in that.
Right, is that
true?
Right,
yeah.
Right. Okay.
And then there are 2 areas of services that we're aware of that seem to be growing in the state with a number of providers. One is transition services, people who are planning and executing move management.
Oh, yeah.
At the point that home is just is not, can't be modified any longer. But for elder services?
Yeah.
Is that?
We do have under, you know where it's under right now? This is, again, we can move it over to here. We have it under because there was no place to fit it. We have the Senior Move Management Association in the system under chore services, and it's not right. It only, under in-home services, somewhere like that. It doesn't fit, so excellent. Yes, I think we need that.
And then there are also people who are providing health management coordination. Nurses who have, there are several of those who seem to be doing
health management.
They're like advocates for elder,
okay,
who don't have families.
Okay, we do have that. Yeah. We have actually we have case management services in the database, and then we broke it down into case management services and case management placement, because there's a big difference. And so we broke those two services into separate services. So we got one out of the four.
Okay.
But and I like that term, transition services, perhaps not just senior move managers, but transition services. And I think we need to move it out from, I think it's time to move it out from just the association and having people go to that association to having the criteria be that you have to be a member of the Senior Move Management Association, or whatever, if any of you are senior move managers and can give me what that criteria should be.
We put that organization, we also put the certified agency in place because
CAPS.
Understanding
right.
that
is
real important.
Yeah. Okay, great. Okay, number 3, inclusion criteria that would be specific for any of providers.
We didn't exactly do your question that you had asked. I'll tell you what we didn't say.
Okay.
We tried to look at all 4 of them.
Yeah, okay.
From our standpoint,
I'm sorry.
the concern we had is that we were running into so many categories, it was becoming very confusing as to which one would we go into. So what we tried to do is see how would we be able to combine those categories, or how do they fit together.
Okay.
Really, one of the ones we spent some time talking about was the home adaptation / modification services and the home safety assessment program. Those are 2 fairly integrated services. If you're doing a home safety assessment, you know a home modifier. If you're doing home modifications, you know the home safety service, or you're providing it yourself.
Okay.
We thought that was one that could be combined.
Okay.
The other thing that we thought we could combine in there is if there was a component to a home activity monitoring system that needed to be installed by a external contractor. So this would be the motion sensors that need to be installed inside of your house to tell what your pattern of living is, as opposed to something that you could wear as a necklace that would call 10 phone numbers. That would not fall into that category. So basically, things that they would then install as part of their home adaptation should fit underneath that category.
Would fit under home adaptation.
I think it's the home adaptation, home safety assessment.
Okay.
So if you're talking to one of those 2 providers, you're really talking to both of them.
Okay.
They either have a network of their own, so to us that those would be the same thing.
Okay.
The other thought we had was inside of these groups, the same way you can sort by cost for an assisted living or a personal care home, you should be able to sort these services by cost once you have been able to drill down as well.
I would think that would be difficult, though, because wouldn't it just depend upon what services would be provided? Some of the cost information here, a private bed, per hour rate, but I would.
You still delineate that cost structure, though, prepaid.
Oh yeah.
That type of thing.
Like, for example, like we don't charge for an in-home assessment, and they probably don't either. But some companies who provide just the safety assessment but don't do the modification piece, they refer that out. They charge for their consultation and their 10-page, let's say, safety report of what might make the home more adaptable and safer.
Okay.
Or at least knowing how you would pay, it's a flat fee. It's a
Right. Clarifying
that.
That.
That would be a good search term inside of all these.
Yeah. Okay.
That would be sort of how we would split
So you may say separate fee for assessment fee, installation fee.
Those would be flat fee.
Okay.
Flat fee, ongoing fee, free.
Okay.
No, so then you could say how, then you could sort of grade how much.
Okay. All right. Okay. Is that it?
I think so.
Okay. Thank you. And the last group 4?
So the real group 3.
Oh.
Great one. Glad you did group
We
search
did the
questions.
same thing you did, we did all of them.
So we had a first point was there's a lot of work that's been done on this topic of how to divide, how to categorize these topics, and it's the website that you had referenced.
Tell me, because if it's been done, I don't want to reinvent anything.
Tech for long-term care.
Okay.
A lot of work that's been done that might be a great reference point.
Okay.
We were speaking then on question 3, the inclusion criteria, and clearly if you're in a category where there's regulatory oversight and accreditation, linking and referencing that makes it a lot easier.
Yeah, it does.
And you do that now.
Cut and dry.
So,
yeah.
and so maybe the challenges in the areas where that's not so clear. And we were trying to come up with some attributes that you could capture and have fields for that. And size is one, although there's no clear correlation between larger is a better service.
Size.
The size of the organization.
Okay.
How many jobs did they do in Georgia last year or in that service area? How many employees? How many installed? You know, something that gives you a sense of how big a concern is it.
That's a good point.
And are you linking into a national company or a local company? That's important to know because you might have different points of view of which of those you want. Again, we think sometimes it's counterintuitive on that in terms of quality. Number of employees. The other thing we thought that would be a great attribute of a good vendor or service provider would be the availability of a website.
Yes.
And a link to the website.
We did that now because we have.
There.
Yeah. Here's your tools for life. And what we can do is we come over here and they just pop over to the website.
And that's almost always the case.
Yeah, it's always the case. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Because then the person can easily just go to that link and make some decisions
right.
about the viability of that vendor.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what we really like.
The last point is a little bit of a macro point, and we appreciate that you are making great progress moving it forward, but the expectations of the consumer community are changing rapidly, and we were making a comment that if you can go to Netflix and find out about movie ratings and order something on Amazon and get reviews and critique, and there's a community, or Clark Howard does a wonderful local community board on buying cars and things, there's going to be an expectation over time that ARC help provide more of a social forum for people to discuss things.
Okay.
And in some ways, you actually might be able to provide better service for your users at lower cost to ARC.
Okay.
So related to that was the idea that another service that should be added would be websites, a category for websites where. Well, I know, but we have to make it perfectly easy. So the idea would be there are websites that are for health monitoring, for chronic care, there's support groups, there's device availability, those kinds of things. And you could have inclusion criteria for the website. So they have to be not-for-profit or government-sponsored or something like that.
We have some websites, and I know we've got about 2 minutes left here. We have some websites like GeorgiaHousingSearch.org we've got in the system, you know, some major state-sponsored websites. I'm wondering if this is a whole nother area, but the database is provider-driven, so it's service provision. But I clicked over here on this little library, and one of the things that we've recognized, like when we first started working with the developmental disabilities population, and our case managers needed to know some of the new terms, needed to know the network, some basic information as they serve persons with developmental disabilities. We actually have a library. Same with our healthcare benefit navigation, because somebody mentioned the transitions and care efforts. So we have this kind of more of an educational piece, and maybe that's where some of those websites, if we don't put them on here, can guide people to.
Well, we were thinking of the website as services.
As services.
There are a lot of websites out there that provide services, so it's more than just education.
Now, is all this available to anyone, or is this just to your
This is available on our website, the Navigating Healthcare. The database is a professional tool, but I'm glad you brought that up, because in regards to the forums, really I would encourage you all to take a look at our website, agewiseconnection.com, because some of this information rolls over to that website. Please take a look. That's a whole nother topic, and we're out of time, but please take a look at the website to see how this information rolls over to the website, and then if indeed there's maybe an opportunity to look at that forum for discussion that you're mentioning. So I am sorry, you've got a question. I'll be here for additional questions. Yeah, I brought cards. So.
We just all want to say we're all very impressed.
Thank you. Oh, thank you. Thank you. I do want to share that I've been telling it. I'm going with the trainings with DHBB, and I have been sharing that we were going to be meeting to discuss this, and they were very excited because they appreciate the expertise level that goes into the system. So thank you.